Chapter 37:25. She hadn't even finished her clamorous words. Suddenly, Yuhan's wrist, which was held tightly, loosened. She heard Yuji's impatient voice, "If you want to prove your love, then accompany her to die." At that moment, Yuhan became quiet. Yiqing Luo laughed softly as she looked at Yunu's twisted face and smiled. "See, it's not that I don't want to give you a chance to prove your love, but what a pity." Yunu's pupils dilated slowly. Her throat suddenly tightened, as though all her breathing was blocked in her throat. She didn't even have time to struggle. Following that, she felt a shapeless flow of air gushing into her internal organs, as though a sharp blade was cutting everything in her body. She struggled and twisted in pain, but there was no way to reduce the pain in her body. She moaned and even wanted to tear her skin apart, to expel the tearing pain in her body. Suddenly, her throat seemed to be pulled by some gas. She cried out in pain, "Ah!" She was in pain, venting. Her mouth kept on screaming Yuhan's name. Not knowing when, Yiqing Luo had let go of her. She floated in midair, screaming and struggling in pain. She couldn't take it. Her body wriggled as she looked at Yuhan. "Save me. Yuhan, save me." But that man who kept saying that he loved her. However, when his eyes met hers, he slowly moved his head away. Yuhan didn't move. He had no intention to save her. Yuji didn't hold him back at all. It was him who had already given up on her. Yunu's screams gradually stopped. In her mind, the words which Yiqing Luo said to her ears inexplicably rang, "Your hearts are all black. Why do you need to talk about love?" That's right. All black. They were all selfish. The so-called talk about love, the so-called pledge of eternal love. Totally not suitable for people like them. So painful. So painful. Yunu couldn't tell if it was Yuhan's giving up which made her heart ache, or the flow of air in her internal organs which made her feel pain. Just as the pain was eroding her, causing her to lose focus. Suddenly, Ghost Girl felt her floating body being pulled into a warm embrace. That warmth seemed to ease the torturous pain in her body. Yunu's heart tightened. Joy spread from the bottom of his heart. Yuhan, she knew it, Yuhan would never give up on her so easily. However, the moment she slowly lifted her gaze, his gaze landed on the figure. Her joyful expression froze on her face. It's you," Yunu spoke in a hoarse voice that was filled with surprise. The man who was holding her was dressed in a loose black robe that covered his entire body. Only from Yunu's angle could she see the man's face under the black robe. In particular, she could clearly see the man's red eyes. The man frowned, his black robe fluttering in the wind. It was as if he was suffering from some great pain. The dark maiden stared blankly at the man. He also saw it clearly. When the man was hugging her, he had to endure the corrosion of the surrounding barrier. That was the enchantment which Yiqing Luo had set up. She wanted the people from the secluded palace, wanted the various powerhouses' cultivators to watch her die in agony. He actually disregarded the corrosion of the enchantment and charged right in front of her. "I'm sorry, I wasn't able to save you." The man's voice was filled with guilt as the hand which was hugging Yunu tightened. Yunu trembled. It was the pain in her body. Chapter 37:26. Yuming, you're so silly. Yunu grinned as she laughed softly. The moment she laughed, a big mouthful of blood gushed out from her mouth. It was accompanied by a painful cough. But she was still laughing. She raised her hand and placed it on the man's face. But, before her hand could reach the man, her body convulsed violently. The light in her eyes was extinguished bit by bit. The hand that was raised also drooped down weakly. A teardrop rolled down from the corner of her eye. No one knew if this teardrop was complaining about her lack of understanding of people, or was it the guilt towards the man. Once Yunu died, the surrounding enchantment was removed. The man carried the person in his arms, as he slowly landed on the ground. His eyes were looking at the person in his arms, whose eyes were shut. On the surface, it was calm. But his inner heart was already in turmoil. Yu Ming. Yuhan pounced over, as she stared fiercely at this man who suddenly appeared, as she shouted sternly, "Hand Yu Nu's corpse to me." Yu Ming ignored her. Yuhan pounced forward, as she stretched out her hand to snatch Yu Nu. Before she could get close, Yu Ming kicked her chest, scram. Yuhan was not prepared, as she was kicked to the ground. He flipped over like a carp and stood up. Netherworld. Yu Nu is my woman. The person she loves is me. I believe, even if she dies, she wants to die in my arms. Yuhan. Yu Ming slowly raised his head. Under the black robe, that pair of scarlet eyes gave off a shocking cold glint. The person who has the least right to say this is you. His voice was icy cold, filled with viciousness. Obviously, you could save her, but for your own life, you gave up on her. Such a selfish person, what right do you have to touch her? Yuhan was stunned by Yu Ming's eyes. But looking at Yu Nu in Yu Ming's arms, her heart felt especially upset. Yuhan naturally liked Yu Nu. So many years of feelings, it couldn't be faked. But between love and his own life, he chose himself. Yi Qing Luo's conditions, he couldn't possibly agree to it. Even if Yu Ji didn't stop him, he couldn't possibly agree to it. In Nirvana realm, their ghost hands 5 you had failed time and time again. If they failed this mission again, the Venerable would definitely take their lives. And he would use the cruelest way to punish their incompetence. TSK. Ah Xian, I'm right, aren't I? Your heart is black, and so is your love life. A clear and melodious voice rang out lightly. That laughter was filled with ridicule and ridicule. Yuhan's face instantly turned ashen, and a sinister black aura appeared between her brows. Following the girl's voice, Yu Ming slowly looked over. Yi Qing Luo calmly waved at Yu Ming, "Long time no see." Yu Ming lowered his head and took a look at Yu Nu in his arms before raising his head and meeting Yi Qing Luo's gaze. His scarlet eyes seemed to be burning with a sea of fire. Seeing this, Yuhan's eyes flashed. "Yu Ming, now is not the time to be calculative. You're also a member of the secluded palace, and your most beloved secluded maiden had died in Yi Qing Luo's hands. Even if it's to avenge Yu Nu, you should help." The Netherworld did not speak. "I know you have the Netherworld mirror. You just need to use the Netherworld mirror to control the Venerable Sovereign. We'll take care of the rest," Yuhan added. He bumped Yu Ji again. Yu Ji's face darkened, but he thought about their mission and the nether mirror in Yu Ming's hand. Chapter 37-27. As Yu Ji spoke, he sized up Yu Ming's expression. Ghost Maiden's pain was caused by Yi Qing Luo. You love Ghost Maiden so deeply, you will definitely avenge her, right? Yu Ji and Yuhan had been persuading him for a long time. Yu Ming, who had been silent like a stone statue, finally moved. He carried Ghost Maiden's corpse as he slowly moved a few steps. He faced Yu Ji and Yuhan's direction. His face was expressionless, his eyes indifferent. "You're right, I should avenge Ghost Maiden." His voice was very soft, so soft that if one didn't listen carefully, they wouldn't be able to hear what he said. Yu Ji and Yuhan's eyes lit up instantly. Yu Ming carried Ghost Maiden as he slowly walked towards Yuhan's direction. He walked very slowly. As he walked, he lowered his eyes to look at the person in his arms, that blood on the corner of her mouth, that painful expression even in death. A trace of treachery flashed past his scarlet eyes. On the other side, everyone who saw this scene had a grave expression. "Ah Luo. Who is that person? From their tone, they seem to have something that can restrain us." Qiao Yinyan frowned as he asked solemnly. His vision seemed to sweep past the man beside Yi Qing Luo. It wasn't hard to sense that the man had enmity towards him. Especially when he shouted out the two words, "Ah Luo." That man's icy cold gaze seemed as though it was going to freeze him into ice. That man was Luo's fiancé. In other words, the legendary Honorable Dizun. Xiao Yimian's feeling wasn't wrong. Dmo Xian not only had enmity towards him. He didn't even allow Yi Qing Luo to talk to him. Just as Yi Qing Luo was about to reply, Dmo Xian suddenly clasped Yi Qing Luo's waist tightly as he spoke in a cold voice, trying to restrain me. I can exterminate them anytime. Finishing his words, he lowered his eyes and looked at Yi Qing Luo tenderly. Since one is already dead, why don't we kill them all, Yi Qing Luo? Only Di San Sui would be jealous in such a Chinibu way in this world? This was called showing off his power in front of his love rival? Was he going to use his domineering aura to overwhelm his love rival? Yi Qing Luo gave Dmo Xian a stare, using her eyes to warn him not to be jealous before she opened her mouth. Yu Ming is not someone who can't see things clearly. Furthermore, the underworld mirror which Yu Han mentioned is in my hands. Back in the 21st century, she had taken the underworld mirror from Netherworld's hand and made it hers. Yu Han's plan was going to fail. Furthermore, although she had not spent much time with the Netherworld, but Yi Qing Luo more or less understood Yu Ming's character. She did not think that Netherworld would attack her in order to avenge Netherworld's death. Yi Qing Luo shot a glance at Yu Ming, who was walking towards the cold, and retracted her line of sight. She pulled away Dmo Xian's long body, which was deliberately blocking in front of her, and looked behind Xiao Yinyan, at the unconscious Pei Sheng. How is Sheng? Ever since Pei Sheng's eruption had sent Pharaoh He flying, Qin Wentian's expression had changed. Pei Sheng fainted. Fortunately, Xiao Yimian reacted quickly and dragged Pei Sheng to a safe place in time. Otherwise, Pei Sheng would definitely have become the target of those dead puppets. Xiao Yimian shook his head. He's not awake yet. Perhaps the sudden eruption of energy had exceeded the limits of his body and his body is unable to take it. Yi Qing Luo didn't feel that it was because it had exceeded the limits of his body. Earlier Pei Sheng's eruption. She also sensed it. On the contrary, she felt. Chapter 37-28. Yi Qing Luo expressed that they were still considered lucky. Dmo Xian rushed over in time. The pressing crisis had all been resolved. Pei Sheng had profited from the misfortune and had the opportunity to advance. Azure Dragon and Shi Ju were fine. Now, they only needed to think of a way to break the auction's array, to let more people leave the auction, to stop the Palace of Darkness's plot. Yu Han looked at Yu Ming, who was nearing, as her eyes were filled with disdain. But the expression and tone on her face was filled with a trace of flattery and comfort. Yu Ming, pass Yu Nu's corpse to me first. After this matter is over, I will bury her at her favorite place. Saying that, he stretched out both hands towards Yu Ming, wanting to receive Yu Nu. But his hands had just stretched out. Suddenly, he felt a piercing pain in his chest. The smile on his face froze. Yu Ming, you. Yu Han's voice was hoarse, as she groaned in pain. He slowly lowered his head. Only to see a hand, pressing against his left chest. That hand, half of it had already entered into his body. It was so easy to hold his heart. Blood gushed out, dyeing Yu Ming's black robe red. Yu Ming, what are you doing? Yu Ji also reacted, as he berated sternly. But looking at the expressionless Yu Ming, who was doing such a bloody scene, he didn't dare to step forward to stop him. His heart was being held tightly. This kind of pain was simply indescribable. Yu Han's painful face turned pale, as her eyes widened, filled with doubt and puzzlement. Yu Ming met Yu Han's questioning gaze indifferently, as he said word by word, what you said is right, I should take revenge for Yu Nu. The person who forced Yu Nu to her death is you. Saying that, he grinned again, as he laughed lowly. That insincere smile, and that treacherous laughter. It was like a combination of lunatics. Yu Han only felt goosebumps all over, as she was extremely terrified. Yu Nu loves you so much, she's dead, how can you live on alone? I can't let Yu Nu stay in this icy cold hell, alone. He was still laughing. But the words that came out of his mouth made one's hair stand. No, I don't want. Bam! The last word, death, Yuhan didn't manage to say it out. The 5 fingers on his heart suddenly tightened. His heart was crushed. Blood splattered. His stiff body was mercilessly thrown aside. Yuming slowly lowered his hand. Blood was flowing from his fingers. He looked down at the woman in his arms and chuckled softly. I'm sorry, I can't bear to let you walk the Yellow Springs Road alone. I know you don't want me to accompany you, so I'll send your most beloved to accompany you. Yuming, are you crazy? Yuji looked at Yuming in disbelief. The netherworld hand was bleeding. His expressionless face made it seem as if he was not the one who had crushed Yuhan's heart. Yuji felt that in the next instant, it was very likely that he would come and pinch his heart. When Yuming raised his head and stared straight at him, Yuming's eyes were fixed on him. Yuji subconsciously took a few steps back. Didn't you want to avenge Yunu? Yunu was killed by Yiqing Luo. Yunu's death was so painful, and it's all because of Yiqing Luo. Yuji's eyes were filled with panic as he hurriedly opened his mouth. However, Yuming continued to stare at him. His gaze was as if he was looking at a dead thing. In the 5 underworlds, it was undeniable that Yuming's ability was the strongest. But it was because Yuming's eyes were different from ordinary people, and his innate talent was the strongest. Chapter 37-29. They and Yuming hadn't met each other for so many years. Yuji felt that he had matured a lot. But when facing Yuming, he still had an instinctive fear in his heart. I'm taking revenge for her. Yuming looked straight at Yuji as his voice was calm. Yuji took another step back. Are you mistaken about the target of your revenge? Yuming laughed. Yiqing Luo is someone who keeps her promises. Earlier, if you had agreed to her request, Yunu wouldn't have died. You're insane. When Yuji heard Yuming's explanation, he was so infuriated that his face turned pale and instantly turned steely green. If we let them go, the Overlord will not let us off. In the end, we still have to die. So, you'd better go and die. Yuming totally didn't listen to Yuji's explanation. As though he had lost Yunu, he had lost the intention to live. Anyway, the 3 of you have always been together. On the road to the netherworld, walk together. Yuji stared at Yuming, knowing that Yuming's current situation could be said to be beyond cure. His eyes sunk and his figure suddenly leapt towards the direction of the black-robed man, hiding his figure in the crowd. Immediately after, he commanded sternly, "Speed up, you must complete the mission." The black-robed man let out a beast-like howl as he roared and charged towards those various powerhouses' cultivators. Yuming only sneered as he looked towards the direction of Yuji and those black-robed men, his lips curled into a sinister smile. Immediately after, he turned around and carried Yunu towards Yiqing Luo. Along the way, the blood on his fingers dripped all the way. He looked even more like a lunatic than old Lai. Xiao Yinyan, executive elder, and the others subconsciously tensed up their emotions as they stared at him vigilantly. Until Yuming's footsteps stopped 5 steps away from Yiqing Luo. Compared to the tensed emotions of the people around him, Yiqing Luo's expression looked much more relaxed and calm. Yuming stared at Yiqing Luo for some time as he frowned. You seem certain that I won't stand on their side. Indeed. Yiqing Luo didn't deny it. You're not an idiot. Moreover, you understand their temperament better than anyone else. Netherworld pursed his lips, and a ripple appeared in his calm eyes. But I actually hate you in my heart. I know. Yiqing Luo smiled, but I don't mind. After all, she was the one who killed the ghost girl. Regardless of the reason, he, who loved Nethergirl, definitely wanted to avenge her. Yuming's eyes became dark and gloomy, and his face became slightly hazy. I really want to kill you. Yiqing Luo scoffed, saying such words to me in front of my man. Do you really want to go down and accompany your beloved woman? Yuming took a look at Dmo Xian and kept his mouth shut with a black face. Towards Yuming's hatred, Yi Qing Luo expressed her understanding. She was also certain that Netherworld would absolutely not make a move against her for now. Rather than hating her, the Netherworld should hate the Palace of Darkness and that so-called Venerable Moor. Yi Qing Luo's brows rose. You intend to hug her corpse and fight with your life on the line against the secluded palace? Take out the nether mirror, Yu Ming said calmly. Yi Qing Luo laughed. The nether mirror is mine now. Are you trying to snatch it back? Borrow, use. Yu Ming's words seemed to be squeezed out from the gaps of his teeth. Yi Qing Luo was satisfied as she threw the nether mirror to Yu Ming. She had already signed the blood pact with the nether mirror, so she wasn't worried that Yu Ming had a way to snatch the nether mirror back. Chapter 37:30. But he totally didn't bother about it. Yi Qing Luo clicked her tongue. As expected, he couldn't be bothered to care for something that didn't belong to him. That bloodied hand was afraid of dirtying Ghost Maiden, so he didn't even dare to touch her. When he held on to the underworld mirror, he couldn't care less. Men. Yi Qing Luo ridiculed in her heart. But her eyes were fixated on Yu Ming's actions. There were many functions of the underworld mirror that she didn't understand. It was not practical to ask Yu Ming about it. She could only rely on herself to explore and learn secretly. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror and stared at Ghost Maiden for a long time, as though he wanted to imprint Ghost Maiden's face firmly in his mind. After a moment of silence, his fingers suddenly clenched the underworld mirror tightly as he shut his eyes tightly. The underworld mirror was aimed at Ghost Maiden. A white light flashed. Ghost Maiden's figure disappeared into Yu Ming's arms. Yu Ming held the underworld mirror tightly as he stared at the smooth mirror. His brows were filled with pain and struggle. He slowly raised his head and looked at Yi Qing Luo. Before the battle ends, can you leave the underworld mirror with me? Although she didn't see clearly what Yu Ming did, but she could roughly guess. Yu Ming borrowed the power of the underworld mirror to temporarily preserve Ghost Maiden's corpse. Yi Qing Luo didn't understand and couldn't understand why Yu Ming was so dead set on Yu. But as a woman who was addicted to dating the Overlord, she understood Yu Ming very well. Alright, but this counts as you owe me a favor, so you can only use the array entrance to open the auction to repay this favor. Yi Qing Luo agreed straightforwardly. Yu Ming took a look at her and shifted his gaze away, not replying to her. Apparently, he didn't want to bother with her. Yi Qing Luo didn't pursue for an answer. Anyway, if Yu Ming couldn't do it, he would always owe her a favor. Qiao Yinyan stared at Yu Ming and sized him up for a long time before asking in a low voice, "Can this person be trusted?" He could tell that the relationship between Yu Ming and the secluded palace wasn't ordinary. Yi Qing Luo nodded. Temporarily we can trust him, but we still have to be careful. Elder A was slightly worried. Since we can't be sure of his safety, why help him? What if he attacks us while we're not paying attention? Not for the time being. Yi Qing Luo was originally too lazy to explain, but under the current situation, she needed to appease them. She thought for a while and explained the reason in a simple manner. He has a deep grudge against the Palace of Darkness and was once a member of the Palace of Darkness. He is very powerful. If he can help us temporarily, it will be a great help. Most importantly, he might have a way to break this formation. Executive Elder A's expression was very complicated, but he did not continue to ask. Let's hold off the monster's attacks for now. We're losing more and more people. Yi Qing Luo changed the topic. In the auction, various powerhouses' elites will suffer losses, and this will have a huge impact on their powerhouses. After the matter ends, there is a possibility that they will blame the losses on the auction. Her gaze swept past the executive elder and the Linglong Palace's hall master, who had a dark expression on his face. The few of you may have to bear full responsibility. Everyone's faces turned pale in an instant. Yi Qing Luo had already said so. They didn't dare to waste any more time. The more they lost, it was even more disadvantageous for them. The entire auction was filled with profound radiance as various kinds of techniques filled the sky. The people around them had already joined the battle. Yi Qing Luo patted Dmo Xian's hand which was placed on her waist, claws. Chapter 37-31. Yi Qing Luo expressed that she couldn't see the man's grievances. She walked past Dmo Xian and walked slowly to Pei Xing's side. The surrounding battle was too intense. If Qiao Yinyan kept paying attention to Pei Xing, it would affect his battle power. But if she ignored Pei Xing, the people from Gloomy Palace would definitely think of ways to deal with Pei Xing again. After all, they were very clear. They could use Pei Xing to threaten her. Yi Qing Luo took Pei Xing's pulse and confirmed that he was fine. She thought for a moment and said to Yu Ming, "Use the underworld mirror to keep Pei Xing in." Yu Ming frowned. "Ghost girl is inside. Separate." She wouldn't let Pei Xing lie together with a corpse, especially that corpse was a lady. If Gu Zixi found out about this, wouldn't she be filled with jealousy? Yu Ming's brows creased even tighter as he remained silent for a moment before he unwillingly walked over with the underworld mirror. The few people beside him stared at Yu Ming with vigilance. Yu Ming didn't mind as he walked to Yi Qing Luo's side. "Move aside." Yi Qing Luo obeyed as she stood up and moved aside. Yu Ming pointed the underworld mirror towards Pei Xing. A flash of white light suddenly flickered. But the truth didn't look like what Yi Qing Luo had seen when Ghost Girl's body disappeared. Pei Xing, who was lying on the ground, didn't disappear. Instead, he moved. First his fingers shook. Immediately following that, his body started to move slowly. Yu Ming took a step back with the underworld mirror and his expression congealed as he looked at Pei Xing in astonishment. "Who is this friend of yours? He can actually counter the power of the underworld mirror?" Counter the power of the underworld mirror? Yi Qing Luo was shocked. His consciousness refused to enter the underworld mirror. Yu Ming kept the underworld mirror. "This is my first time encountering such a situation. Your friend is very powerful." "You mean Brother Pei's ability is very powerful?" Qiao Yinyan seemed to doubt his own ears when he heard that. Yu Ming took a look at Qiao Yinyan and replied calmly, "Yes, generally speaking, there aren't many who can resist the power of the underworld mirror, even she." Yu Ming pointed at Yi Qing Luo and continued, "I'm afraid she can't resist the power of the underworld mirror." Qiao Yinyan's expression was complicated. "Ah Sheng is indeed extraordinary." Yi Qing Luo pursed her lips. Earlier when he was restrained by Pharaoh, the power which he exploded out was extremely strong. Yi Qing Luo half squatted down and was about to stretch out her hand to take Pei Xing's pulse. But just as he stretched out his hand, a large palm suddenly grabbed her wrist. That palm was extremely powerful. Yi Qing Luo's wrist was in pain. In the next instant, Pei Xing's body suddenly straightened. His eyes were tightly shut as he faced Yi Qing Luo, emitting a kind of powerful aura which was about to erupt like a volcano. Yi Qing Luo frowned and was about to open her mouth. The man who was facing him suddenly opened his eyes. It was a pair of golden eyes. That's right, gold. Although it was not pure gold, there was also a hint of dark gold. But when Pei Xing's eyes met with Yi Qing Luo's, Yi Qing Luo's heart was still shaken. Those eyes, why did she look so familiar? Why do I feel like I've seen him somewhere before? Brother Pei. Qiao Yinyan's voice interrupted Yi Qing Luo's thoughts. Qiao Yinyan was already squatting in between him and Pei Xing as he stretched out his hand and placed it on Pei Xing's hand. "You're hurting Ah Luo." Pei Xing's hand was still holding onto Yi Qing Luo's wrist tightly. The force had no intention of lessening. Yi Qing Luo was just about to say that it was all right. Suddenly, he felt something tighten around his waist. Her feet left the ground as she fell into a warm embrace. Chapter 37-32. Ah Xian. Yi Qing Luo's arms immediately encircled the man's neck. The man clasped her waist tightly and looked at Pei Xing and Qiao Yinyan in an unfriendly manner. "It's all right. Ah Sheng just woke up and his mind isn't clear." Yi Qing Luo comforted him with a smile as her little hand caressed the man's face and used her fingers to wipe away his smile. Dmo Xian's expression was still gloomy. Yiqing Luo felt that this time round, Di Sansui's vinegar jar was getting more and more sour. Not only sour, it was developing towards 2 years old. Yiqing Luo changed the topic. Xian, have you realized that Xing's eyes seem rather familiar, as if I have seen it somewhere before? You seem to be especially concerned about that kid called Pei Sheng? Dmo Xian lowered his eyelids as his peach blossom eyes locked onto Yiqing Luo. His slightly lowered voice was obviously oppressive. Yiqing Luo. Alright, this change of topic made Di Sansui even more jealous. At this moment, a frivolous voice came from behind. Overlord, you will easily lose Qing Luo in this way. Following that, Yiqing Luo saw Zhou Mo hugging Kitty Li as he walked towards them. Behind them was an expressionless ghost martial artist. When the three of them walked over and even staged a mime, when Kitty Li saw Yiqing Luo, her pair of animated eyes lit up. She wanted to rush over, but she was hugged tightly by Zhou Mo. Kitty Li turned her head and stared at Zhou Mo with her claws and fangs bared. However, Zhou Mo patted her head and whispered something into her ear. This caused Kitty Li's cheeks to turn red. After that, she nestled in Zhou Mo's arms and stopped struggling. This scene unknowingly stuffed a mouthful of dog food into Yiqing Luo's mouth. Yiqing Luo expressed her heartache. Her Kitty Li had really been taken over by a fox. How long had it been? Kitty Li was subdued by the fox. After the mime ended, the three of them approached Yiqing Luo and the rest. Zhou Mo Xian raised his brows at Dmo Xian as he squinted his bewitching phoenix eyes and sloppily continued the topic earlier. Men, your possessiveness cannot be too strong. Qing Luo has her own rights to make friends, and as Qing Luo's man, how can you put on that attitude towards her friends? You still have to learn from this young master what is called a man's way of life. Dmo Xian abruptly shifted his gaze as he stared at Zhou Mo with an icy cold gaze. His eyes were surging with billowing waves. A chill ran down Zhou Mo's spine, and he tucked his tail between his legs. But his mouth was still unwilling to admit defeat as he raised his eyes towards Yiqing Luo. Qing Luo, do you think what I said is right or not? Yiqing Luo. Why did he bring the topic back to her again? This was a suicidal question. Yiqing Luo was just about to open her mouth, but she met Dmo Xian's serious and solemn gaze. From Dmo Xian's eyes, she could tell. Dmo Xian was also asking her, was Zhou Mo right? Yiqing Luo, taking a deep breath, she pursed her pink lips and looked at Zhou Mo with a smile. Enunciating each word, she asked, I just like it when my man gets jealous and cares about my looks. I spoil and spoil him. So what? Jealous? Following that, her gaze shifted downwards as she looked at Kitty Li and her smile became even sweeter. Kitty Li, since young Master Mo wants to learn a man's way of life, then you should follow what he said and tell him what is called a man's real way of life. Zhou Mo's face turned pale in an instant, before he could even hug Kitty Li tightly. Chapter 37-33. Kitty Li looked at him righteously and said, you said it yourself. You can't be too possessive. A kitty has the right to make friends. Kitty wanted to be with her beloved big sister. If you really love cats, then you should satisfy them. Zhou Mo. Damn it. Lifting a rock only to smash one's own foot. So it hurts so much. Yiqing Luo's brows rose as she looked at him with a smile which didn't look like a smile. Heh, isn't it fun to be mischievous? Are you still naughty? Kitty Li leaned in front of Yiqing Luo as her big eyes blinked, looking at Dmo Xian who was like a stone statue, standing motionless by the side. After that, it looked at Yiqing Luo adorably. Sister, Cat misses you so much. As he spoke, he opened his arms, looking like he was asking for a hug. Success made Dmo Xian's face darken. Yiqing Luo didn't miss the crafty smile in Kitty Li's eyes. Good job. How long had her cute and innocent little kitten spent with Zhou Mo, that sly fox? Did she become a little naughty cat? She even dared to tease her brother-in-law, the overlord. However, even if Yiqing Luo's heart was cursingly Mao's transformation. But looking at Kitty Lee's cute little face, Yiqing Luo pushed her man away without any hesitation and turned around to embrace Kitty Lee's petite body into her arms. Well, it's been a long time. Just to satisfy his willful little sister's bad taste. While satisfying Kitty Lee, Yiqing Luo also paid attention to her man's emotions. After hugging Kitty Lee for a while, she let go of Kitty Lee and whispered, "Be good." Then, she coughed lightly, "Let's think of a way to break this formation first, then we'll find a place to reminisce." The evil Yin energy in the surroundings is getting denser and denser. If this goes on, the profound practitioners of the various powers might be affected by the evil Yin energy. Kitty Lee acted coquettishly, unwilling to leave Yiqing Luo. However, she was still dragged back into Zhou Mo's arms. Yiqing Luo smiled like a flower as she hugged Dmo Xian's waist again, her chin resting on his chest as she beamed. "Ah, Xian is so incredible, there must be a way, right?" It was just a smile. One took the initiative to throw herself into his arms. The gloomy expression on the man's face brightened up. "Ah, Luo." Qiao Yinyan waited for Yiqing Luo to finish her conversation with her old friend before calling out. Yiqing Luo looked over. Qiao Yinyan raised his chin in Pei Xing's direction. "Brother Pei seems a little off. I don't know what's going on. I tried talking to him, but he didn't respond." As soon as Pei Xing woke up, his reaction of grabbing her arm was indeed very strange. Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian along as they neared Pei Xing. Pei Xing sat on the ground. His body was stiff and he sat up straight. His arm was still bent in the same position as when he was grabbing her wrist. Even those golden eyes remained the same as before. What was going on? Yiqing Luo's slender brows creased slightly as she pulled Dmo Xian to a half-squat position. She tentatively reached out to Pei Xing. He waved it in front of Pei Xing and called out softly, "Ah Xing?" The eyelashes of the man who was stunned on the spot trembled. Suddenly, he shifted his line of sight towards Yiqing Luo. "Yiqing Luo. Didn't we agree? Why didn't he respond?" Qiao Yinyan. He was also very shocked. Could it be that Brother Pei despised him, so he didn't give him any response? Dmo Xian. "Give you a look, feel it yourself." Pei Xing stared at Yiqing Luo in a daze. Under the dim golden pupils, Yiqing Luo's face was reflected. Chapter 37-34. Yiqing Luo didn't know what kind of expression she should use to express her inner F***ck feelings at this moment. "Brother Pei, it's easy for people to misunderstand you. Think about your little sister Zixi." Yiqing Luo could clearly feel the low pressure coming from the man beside her. Yiqing Luo felt her throat itching again. She coughed a few times and looked at Pei Xing calmly. "How are you?" "I don't know." Pei Xing raised his arms, his eyes filled with confusion. "I feel that my body is different from before. It's as if I have inexhaustible strength." He blinked his golden eyes and said, "There seems to be a voice in my head, urging me to fight to my heart's content." Yiqing Luo stared at Pei Xing's face for a long time. Then he said, "Oh." He glanced at the battlefield not far away and said, "Go, fight." Pei Xing clenched his fists and felt the power in his body. However, his eyes were still filled with confusion and uncertainty. "Can I really do it?" "You have to believe in your own strength." Yiqing Luo withstood the enormous pressure as she patted Pei Xing's shoulder. "Don't tell me you don't want to leave this place, don't want to return to the treasures exchange hall, don't want to stay by Zixi's side and watch her wake up?" No one knew if he had mentioned Zhu Bao or Zixi's name. The perplexed man's eyes flickered a few times and became more resolute. Yiqing Luo retracted her hand and continued, "Haven't I said this before? Zixi will either wake up today or tomorrow. If she knew that you were trapped in the auction's array, what would she do? If she forced her way into the auction in order to find you, you should know very well how dangerous it is inside." Pei Xing suddenly raised his head, his clenched fists seemed to be surrounded by a thin layer of profound light. although it was not obvious. However, his aura was extremely strong. He looked at the battlefield. Blood dyed the ground. It was a brutal and ruthless scene. His eyes gradually became sharp. Yiqing Luo pulled Dmo Xian as she slowly stood up and gave him an encouraging smile. Go on. An afterimage flashed before his eyes. The man's figure had already rushed into the battlefield. His speed was as fast as lightning. Pei Xing joined the battle. At first, he wasn't used to it. However, after swinging his fists and punching the black-robed men one by one, the black-robed men exploded. Gradually, he found the feeling. Moreover, he noticed that his attacks were different from the other profounders. The attacks of the other profound practitioners did not affect the black-robed man in the slightest. At most, he could only hinder the other party's movements. However, his attack and the profound strength that he released, he could completely suppress the black-robed man. Although it was not to the extent of destroying the other party, it could also make the black-robed man lose the ability to fight. Yiqing Luo saw Pei Xing getting braver and braver as she retracted her vision. She felt like an old mother watching her son go to the battlefield. She sighed and stuffed herself into Dmo Xian's arms and said, "Did you hear that? He has other ladies in his heart and he treats me as his benefactor." Did I say anything? Dmo Xian raised his brows and asked. Yiqing Luo. Indeed, he didn't say anything, but could you control your expression before asking back? Dmo Xian suddenly suppressed his voice as he gave a smile which didn't look like a smile but was filled with danger. You're in such a hurry to explain to me, looks like. You and him really. Yiqing Luo directly raised her fist and pounded on her chest as she turned around and left. Go be jealous if you like, I'm not going to serve you anymore. Chapter 37-35. Humph. Don't think that she didn't know what he was thinking. Wasn't he intentionally finding trouble? Waiting for her to coax him? His ultimate motive was to let her use the way he wanted to satisfy him, to compensate him. Men. She had long seen through his little tricks. Coax him? Hee, now come and coax her obediently. After Yiqing Luo charged into the battlefield, Azure Dragon and Shi Ju followed closely behind. After Azure Dragon charged into the battlefield, he let out an angry roar. Following that, he turned into a huge dragon body as his dragon's breath spewed out and his tail swayed. A bunch of black-robed men were smashed into pieces. The entire auction sky and the surrounding air was filled with a terrifying hurricane. In fact, the spirit formation barrier that enveloped the auction hall was trembling non-stop from the Azure Dragon's berserk power. Large tracts of air waves were like ripples on the surface of a lake, as it rippled in circles. The auction fell into a state of violent shaking. Even the ground began to crack like a spider's web, with countless fine cracks densely packed together. It showed that Azure Dragon was really infuriated. Shi Ju was Azure Dragon's reverse scale. Sir Yuji, what should we do? Pharaoh he dodged left and right to avoid the flying broken stones as he looked at Yuji who had a gloomy expression as he asked anxiously. Yuji stared at Azure Dragon viciously, without replying. But his expression and the tensed muscles on his body could be seen. His current emotions were already on the verge of exploding. They had obviously done all the preparations. They could totally wipe out this bunch of trash from the Earth domain. Yet, such an accident happened. Obviously. The Overlord couldn't possibly appear here. They specially separated the Overlord and Yiqing Luo, so that they could deal with Yiqing Luo alone. Obviously. Death God Castle's Castle Lord couldn't possibly appear here. But unfortunately, Zhu Wu Xian appeared just like that, and he even stood on Yiqing Luo's side, in an absolutely protective manner. Full of confidence, he brought his corpse puppets to the auction to carry out a massacre. He had not expected that before it even started. Out of their 3 nether, 2 of them were dead. Now in the ghost hand's 5 nether, there were only him and Yuming left. But Yuming was obviously planning to betray the Palace of Darkness. It could be said that this mission They had suffered a huge loss. If this went on, this mission might really fail. His eyes suddenly darkened. No. He absolutely could not fail. Those fools were not afraid of death. But he didn't want to die. Eugene narrowed his eyes as if he had made a decision. Then, he looked at Pharaoh Crane. Do you want to live? Pharaoh Crane nodded vigorously. Didn't they join the Palace of Gloomy Darkness to survive? Do you still remember the conditions of the deal between the Dark Organization and the Nether Palace? Eugene asked. Pharaoh's expression froze, and the muscles on his face twitched. Finally, he said, I remember. The Palace of Darkness will help us take revenge and reform the dark forces. They will also help us awaken the King of Darkness at his peak. He paused and said the next sentence with difficulty and reluctance. If the Palace of Darkness can do it, we, the dark forces, will all surrender to the leader of the Palace of Darkness and become a part of the Palace of Darkness. As long as you remember. Eugene pursed his lips. After this mission is completed, bring me to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane's expression stiffened. So fast? Are you prepared to awaken the King of Darkness? Chapter 37-36. Pharaoh he quickly lowered his head. No, I wouldn't dare. Eugene gave a cold harumph. Yiqing Luo has too many helpers by her side. Palace of Secluded Darkness also needs to develop their helpers. Awakening the King of Darkness will give us an additional helping hand. After saying that, he made the final decision. It's decided. After we leave the auction, we will head to the King of Darkness's resting place. Pharaoh Crane was very nervous. However, when he saw Eugene's impatient expression, he nodded in the end. Yes. The Pharaoh of the Dark Forces who was once high and mighty. With a wave of his arm, tens of thousands of people responded. But now, he had to rely on others to survive. This was a great humiliation to Pharaoh he and the Dark Forces. It was not that Eugene did not notice the unwillingness in Pharaoh's eyes. He just couldn't be bothered. Ever since the Dark Forces joined the Abyss Palace, the Dark Forces were just a tool to be used. Want to make a comeback? That was impossible. Eugene's eyes flashed past a glint of disdain, but the words he said were still in a normal conversational tone. Keep a close eye on the Overlord and Death God Castle Lord. Today's mission absolutely cannot fail. I'll go deal with Yiqing Luo and that dragon. You. Pharaoh Crane widened his eyes. Yiqing Luo and that dragon were hard to deal with. However, Dizun and Death God Castle's Castle Master were even more difficult to deal with. How could he keep an eye on her? However, Pharaoh he was not allowed to refuse. Eugene had already leaped up and charged in the direction of Azure Dragon. A dense evil aura emanated from his body. Yiqing Luo shot a glance at Eugene as her lips curled up, sneering as she flicked her fingers. The gourd flame fan that was originally aimed at the black-robed man suddenly closed. Shortly after, a mysterious light surrounded the glowing flame fan. The profound energy that soared to the sky was like a sharp blade, as it shot straight towards Eugene's face. When the evil Yin Chi collided with the bright red light, the air vibrated. The dark force collided. A huge burst of sparks exploded. Immediately after, a huge leopard's claw slammed down on his head. Eugene immediately dodged to the side. He was hit in the chest by the remaining power of the Xian light. He grunted and took 2 steps back. He clutched his chest as his sinister eyes, which were suffused with black chi, stared deadly at Yiqing Luo. Yiqing Luo raised her eyebrows in ridicule. Her long and narrow eyes seemed to be wrapped in frost, finally willing to make a move. I thought you were going to continue to be a coward. Yiqing Luo, you will regret saying this. Eugene's eyes turned cold as the black gas enveloped him completely. He suddenly let out a roar. The hand that was covering his chest suddenly exerted force and directly plunged into his own body. Blood gushed out and dyed his hand red. However, it was as if he couldn't feel the pain. The expression on his face contorted and became crazed. The corners of his mouth curled up into a horrifying sneer. What is he trying to do? Suicide? Yiqing Luo was stunned by Yuji's actions. Old Man Song said seriously, Little Luo, don't let your guard down. I think he's planning to use his own flesh and blood to cast some forbidden technique. Yiqing Luo. Another forbidden technique. Other than using sinister methods, couldn't the Dark Palace fight them head-on? Yiqing Luo pursed her lips as she looked straight at Yuji. Forbidden technique, right? A forbidden technique which has been interrupted, can it still be a forbidden technique? Her 5 fingers moved and the gourd flame fan turned into streaks of neighborhood light as it entangled towards Yuji from all directions, attempting to interrupt Yuji's thoughts. But just as her attack was about to get close to Yuji. Chapter 37:37. Bam! The profound light collided with the protective shield, causing the air to vibrate and shake violently. Yiqing Luo frowned and was about to attack further. Suddenly, a huge monster suddenly appeared in front of her. A huge roar with a fishy smell hit her in the face. Yiqing Luo even felt that the surrounding air had sunk into a burst of violent turbulence. She frowned, raised her hand and used the glower flame fan to block the incoming hurricane. What was going on? In front of her was a huge wave of profound qi. She couldn't see clearly what was happening in front of her. She could only hear the sound of cold air being sucked in, mixed with a few exclamations. Following that, there were terrified screams. As the fluctuation in front increased, the wave in front of her also dispersed in all directions. Yiqing Luo could vaguely see a huge beast crawling on the ground. That beast was half a head taller than the auction building, its huge body slightly swayed and brought along a hurricane, which could send people flying at any time. The beast raised its head and roared, the sound was deep and deafening. Even the ground began to shake with that howl. That disgusting stench was emitted from the beast in front of her. What kind of monster was this? Was it the same as the fake white dragon's white fang, a corpse puppet? No. In his mind, Old Man Song very quickly gave a negative answer. That is the forbidden technique that this old man spoke of. Using one's own flesh and blood and strength to create dark beasts to fight alongside one's own. Dark attribute beast? Yiqing Luo had never heard of this kind of beast and could only guess based on the surface. Could it be, this huge monster is a battle tool created by Yuji using his own flesh and blood? You can say that. Old Man Song said, this is completely different from a corpse puppet, because it belongs to the illusory category. That beast can cause huge damage to you, but your attack is like hitting the fog, it doesn't hurt or itch. Yiqing Luo's pupils contracted, so exaggerated? It seems that the other party is determined to succeed in this operation. Old Man Song said solemnly, you have to be careful. During the conversation with Old Man Song, that huge beast had completely taken shape. As the beast raised its claws, it landed heavily on the ground. The surrounding hurricanes and flying sand were all swept away in all directions. In Yiqing Luo's line of sight, there appeared a gigantic. She couldn't tell what kind of wild beast it was. It looked like a tiger, a lion, and a leopard, everything was alike, yet nothing was alike at all. All in all, it could be summed up with one word, ugly. It was extremely ugly. She had seen countless species of magical beasts. It was his first time seeing such an ugly beast. However, no matter how ugly it was, it could not conceal the powerful aura emitted from the beast. It was awe-inspiring, as if it was above the 9 heavens. That arrogance, the momentum of looking down on the world. It was definitely not inferior to the 4 great saint beasts. Roar, that wild beast faced Yiqing Luo and opened its mouth to let out a deafening roar. The air surged and the ground shook. Yiqing Luo expressed, she did not feel the domineering aura of a wild beast's provocation. She only felt the thick breath of a wild beast. That roar came down. His mouth was filled with the stench of blood and stench. It was disgusting. Yiqing Luo felt that her stomach was extremely uncomfortable. Chapter 37-38. Suddenly, a ray of green light flashed past her eyes. A sturdy shield appeared in front of her. Following that, the stench also dissipated. It was the green dragon. The green dragon coiled its body and blocked in front of her, blocking the beast's turbid air. It enveloped her completely under its protective shield. Roar! The beast roared ferociously as the powerful aura exploded from its body and gradually rose. Rumble! The surrounding buildings also collapsed under the roars of the wild beasts. Roar, roar, roar! The beast seemed to be afraid of the green dragon. After it realized that it was unable to attack Yiqing Luo, it turned around and waved its claw towards the other side of the battlefield. A nearly 3 meters tall gigantic beast could cause the earth to quake and mountains to shake with just one claw. The ground cracked and collapsed. The violent force was like a tornado, sweeping up the crushed stones and soil on the ground, scattering in all directions. That overbearing power. It wiped out a group of cultivators in a matter of minutes. The crushed stones that splashed out entered the cultivators' bodies and took away their lives directly. Its power was so strong that it made one fearful. For a moment, the auction was filled with wails. When the cultivators from various powerhouses saw this beast, they thought of that white dragon monster which had been slashed. Apparently, this beast in front of them was much more powerful than that white dragon monster. They didn't even have a chance to retaliate. Were they really going to doom today? Everyone's mood instantly fell to the bottom of the valley. The atmosphere of despair filled the air. Roar! The beast was very satisfied with everyone's fear towards it, accompanied by Yuji's cold laughter. The beast suddenly leaped up and flew into the sky. That huge body was extremely agile. With this leap, he jumped several zhang high into the air. The hurricane that was stirred up by his body carried the momentum of a tempestuous wave, and it forced the surrounding profound practitioners to fly backwards. Screams came from everyone's mouths. After the beast leaped up, it quickly rushed down in their direction. Heavens! Is this beast trying to crush us to death? Quick! Spread out! Help! Help! The crowd watched as the beast's huge body fell like a huge meteorite. A majestic and thick dark force followed. The entire sky was filled with violent profound energy, like a tide. It was unstoppable. A single monster was enough to annihilate all the elites from the major forces. What kind of terrifying organization was this? Those profound practitioners who were sent flying didn't even have the chance to dodge. They could only look on helplessly as the huge beast charged towards them. Boom! Ka-ka! Ka-cha! The huge explosion was deafening. A berserk power swept out. Even in the air, there seemed to be cracks appearing. The space trembled, and a surging wave of energy slammed into everything in the surroundings. Everyone's hearts were in their throats. Fear and despair before death took over his entire heart. However, under this earth-shattering explosion of power, none of them felt their lives slipping away. The feeling of surviving made everyone feel both shocked and joyful. They widened their eyes and looked at the sky full of dark rays in confusion. Not far from them, the enormous monster smashed into the group of black-robed men. The ground caved in as a result of the monster's attack. A huge pit was created. Many black-robed men were smashed into pieces. What was going on? Wasn't that monster smashing them? Chapter 37-39. The next moment, the doubts in everyone's hearts were answered. In the deep pit where the monster had collapsed, a red figure suddenly appeared. The red-robed young lady had a devastatingly beautiful face, a pair of long and narrow eyes, as though the stars were ravaging. She was obviously dainty like a flower. But her cold and murderous aura made one's heart tremble. Like a beautiful death god who had walked out from hell. Like a poppy which made one suffocate, yet not daring to touch it. In that huge deep pit, the young lady's figure was extremely petite. When she leapt into the sky, A green light flashed and the green dragon spiraled, protecting the young lady in it. The green dragon's scales glowed brilliantly, giving off an extremely cold and chilling aura. Yuji, you only have this bit of ability? The girl's clear and cold voice carried an oppressive aura, mixed with a trace of obvious ridicule. When the crowd heard this, their hearts were in their throats. Did this lady know what she was saying? That monster was summoned by the people from the Palace of Darkness. She provoked the other party. If she angered that monster, what if it swallowed her in one mouthful? At this moment, in everyone's hearts, they had subconsciously placed their hopes on this young lady. They had totally forgotten. Not long ago, they were still suspecting her in every way. Perhaps it was because right now, everyone's hearts were already filled with despair. Only Yiqing Luo, this young lady, a newborn calf who wasn't afraid of the tiger, dared to hoot at the Palace of Darkness, and had such a noble war pet. So they tried to find hope in the midst of despair. They subconsciously felt that if they wanted to leave the auction alive, they could only rely on this young lady called Yiqing Luo. And because of that, hearing Yiqing Luo's provocation, everyone was so nervous that they were suffocating. As expected, Yuji was provoked. His face was pale, one hand was still pressed on his chest, tightly holding onto his flesh, allowing the blood to flow on his palm. He smiled sinisterly at Yiqing Luo, laughing coldly. Yiqing Luo, your luck will not last forever. So what if you have the green dragon? You will absolutely not be able to defeat my blood fang. Using my flesh and blood to construct the blood fang. Following Yuji's passionate low roar, the huge beast buried in the deep pit suddenly gave a loud roar. Immediately after, the ground began to shake violently. Beast slapped the ground hard. Its huge body instantly leaped out of the deep pit. A stream of black chi instantly wrapped around the wild beast. Yuji raised his head and stared at the wild beast. His hand, which was in his chest, went deeper into his chest. His face contorted in pain. However, the corner of his mouth was still hanging in a twisted arc. Blood fang, suck my heart's flesh and become stronger. Fresh blood stained Yuji's arm. Then, little by little, it dissipated on his skin. Yiqing Luo could clearly feel that the energy of the monster wrapped in chi had grown stronger. Damn it! A monster created from flesh and blood, as long as it continued to suck its master's blood, it would be able to recover and level up? You guessed correctly. Old Man Sung explained, this kind of forbidden technique is extremely cruel. If there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the person who digs out the blood from their own heart will die from excessive blood loss or from the wrong position. Once the master dies, the monster will also disappear. Yiqing Luo looked at Yuji, then I'll just attack Yuji. Chapter 3740. Damn it. Did it need to be so difficult? Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly as her lips pursed tightly. No matter what, killing this wild beast called Blood Fang was obviously an unrealistic thing. She could only think of a way to deal with Yuji. She gripped her glower flame fan tightly as her figure moved, nearing Yuji's direction. Yuji only sneered when he saw that. His gaze turned cold. Blood Fang, which was surrounded by black chi, turned into a bolt of lightning as it charged towards Yiqing Luo. That speed was even faster than Yiqing Luo by several times. Yiqing Luo's brows creased as she quickened her footwork. The glower flame fan in her hand swiftly swept away the wind blades as it pressed towards Yuji. Azure Dragon twisted Blood Fang. Blood Fang was still able to find a gap to use his own body to block Yiqing Luo's attack. Following that, he turned around and pounced towards Azure Dragon. This kind of dark attributed wild beast will automatically block fatal attacks for the host. Old Man Sung continued, so I said right from the start that it's very difficult to get past the dark attributed wild beast and kill the host. Is there no other way? Yiqing Luo asked. Old Man Sung replied, no. Yiqing Luo frowned as she didn't ask any more questions, but focused on finding a chance to attack Yuji. Yiqing Luo's side was already in a battle. On the other side, the various powerhouses clenched their teeth as they started to join the battle between the black-robed men. At this moment, they could only choose to unite as one and fight with their backs against the wall. The terror of the opponent was something they had seen very clearly. If they didn't take advantage of the situation where Yiqing Luo was suppressing that monster to finish off these small fries. When Yiqing Luo couldn't hold on any longer, they would be in danger. Everyone started to fight, which made the executive elders heave a sigh of relief. Everyone started to join in the battle. Gue Wu, Zhou Mo, and Mao Mao joined in. The battle was much easier than before. Numerous attacks and dazzling profound energy filled the sky. The surging majestic energy was like surging waves as it surged continuously. Battle intent and killing intent intertwined in the air. But on the chaotic battlefield, there were two extremely abrupt presences. One red and one purple. Two men with outstanding temperament, as though they were aloof from the world, stood in the middle of the battlefield without any intention to make a move. Unfortunately, the two men's temperament was so powerful that it suppressed everyone from the secluded palace. It didn't matter if it was the people from the major forces or the Palace of Darkness. They would consciously avoid the two of them, not daring to get close to them. The biggest similarity between the two of them was, from the beginning until the end, his gaze had never left the young girl who was fighting Yu Ji and Shuya. It was as if, in his eyes, even in the entire world, there was only this girl. The dark light that filled the sky was sharp and murderous. The young girl moved quickly among the wild beasts. Her coordination with the azure dragon was reflected in the eyes of the two men. At this moment, suddenly, the beast roared. From his wide-open mouth, he spat out another ball of sticky stuff. When the sticky giant thing landed on the ground, it was covered in blood. It also let out a roar similar to blood fangs. This sudden change made Yiqing Luo stunned. The stench in the air was getting stronger and stronger. The stench was like the stench of a corpse that had been rotting for many years, and it also carried a thick stench of blood. Apart from the size of the beasts, they were almost identical in appearance. Yiqing Luo was cursing in her heart. How could he give birth from his mouth? And it gave birth so quickly? Opening his mouth and spitting out, he gave birth to a monster that looked exactly the same. One wild beast was already hard to deal with. And now there was a second one. Illusory wild beasts were willful, right? Chapter 37:41. Oh my God, that monster actually gave birth to a new monster? What's going on? Is that an illusion? Are we really going to die here? Everyone opened their eyes wide in disbelief after seeing Beast's godly performance. The confidence and fighting spirit that they had worked so hard to nurture. All of them were badly hurt. One monster was enough to wipe them out. Not to mention the addition of another one. This was not giving them a chance to live. Cough, cough. The Palace of Darkness said that as long as you join us, you can leave this place alive. While everyone was panicking, a voice panting heavily sounded, enunciating every word. Xiao Yulu walked out from the corner. She was still holding onto the wall, her face pale. Her white dress was stained red with blood. Her body was still trembling slightly. Obviously, her injuries were not light. She could walk out now. She had already used up all of her strength. Xiao Yulu gritted her teeth and endured the pain. She stared at the people on the battlefield with her dark eyes and spoke again. Join the Palace of Darkness. You have also seen the strength of the Dark Nether Palace. Their strength will let us see real hope. After she said this, she coughed hard. Mouthfuls of blood gushed out. Without embroiling city's fairy? Princess Yulu? Everyone was attracted by Xiao Yulu's voice and looked at her. After hearing Xiao Yulu's words, their expressions were no longer as resistant as before, instead, they loosened up. After seeing the power of the Palace of Darkness, those who wanted to live would naturally, no longer resist. Looking at the huge beast, the ground full of blood and corpses. Everyone's heart started to waver. With Xiao Yulu's help, Yuji seized the chance and said, "That's right. As long as you join the Palace of Darkness and become its disciples, I will guarantee your safety." I will join. Me too. Is what you're saying true? As long as we join, we can leave the auction. Then I will join too. More and more profound practitioners, driven by fear, chose to join the Palace of Darkness. There were also some who wanted to make a decision after leaving the auction. But, such little cleverness. How could the gloomy palace, which had always played dirty, not be on guard? As the profound practitioners who joined the Nether Palace walked towards the black-robed man according to Yuji's request, a ray of black light scattered across the sky like a fairy scattering flowers. Strings of black light flowed into the bodies of the various profound practitioners. The expressions of all the profound practitioners changed greatly, and they immediately covered their chests as they questioned in panic. Yuji's face was pale. Because one of his hands was still stuck in his chest, he looked extremely sinister and terrifying. He coldly swept his gaze across the panicking profound practitioners in front of him and sneered, "This is the mark of Dark Ghost Palace. After becoming a disciple of Dark Ghost Palace, you can only be loyal to Dark Ghost Palace. If you do anything that goes against Dark Ghost Palace's mark will devour your flesh and soul." What? What kind of bullsh T mark is that? Aren't you making things difficult for me? I don't want this kind of mark. Quickly expel it from my body. Chapter 3742. Someone shouted, "Don't try to scare me. I don't believe in this. Using such a method to force me. I don't want to do it anymore." The man cursed as he turned around and walked towards the direction of the major forces. However, before he took a few steps, suddenly, that person stopped. Then, he let out an extremely tragic cry. That person turned into a mist of blood in front of everyone's eyes. The most shocking thing was, within the blood mist, there was a ball of black flowing light. The flowing light flickered. The blood mist gathered towards the flowing light. Then, it returned to Yuji's hand. This scene stunned those profounders who were clamoring. They pressed their chests. Their faces were filled with fear and unease. The thing that entered their bodies was like a timed attack device. It was very likely that they would all be devoured in the next instant. How would they dare to act rashly? Is there anyone else who wants to leave? Yuji sneered when he saw that he had successfully intimidated everyone with this move of killing the chicken to warn the monkeys. All the profound practitioners' faces were pale and filled with fear. No one dared to clamor anymore. However, this caused those profound practitioners who were planning to join the Nether Palace to start hesitating again. What are you hesitating for? There's nothing to hesitate about. Xiao Yulu tried to persuade them again. However, after saying this, she seemed to have lost all her strength. Her body went limp and she sat on the ground against the wall. Her blood stained the ground. She held on and continued, "As long as you don't have any thoughts of betraying the Palace of Darkness, so what if this imprint is in your bodies? I feel that this will not affect you." Everyone turned to look at Xiao Yulu at the same time. They seemed to be struggling with Xiao Yulu's words. Yuji threw a look at Pharaoh He. Pharaoh He's eyes flashed slightly, but he did not say anything and flew towards Xiao Yulu. Pharaoh Crane landed behind Xiao Yulu, and with an indifferent expression, he took out a medicine bottle that was suffused with black gas from his spatial pocket. He poured out a medicinal pill and threw it at Xiao Yulu's feet. His voice was cold and aloof. "This is a medicinal pill given to you by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness. After consuming it, your injuries will be healed." His arrogant attitude made Xiao Yulu frown. However, her fatigue and injuries had worsened, and she no longer had the strength to argue with the Pharaoh Crane. As a matter of fact, Pharaoh He threw the pill to her. In her heart, she did not want to eat it. However, when he thought of what had happened to the people from the Palace of Darkness, he felt that it was a pity. She still took a deep breath, raised her hand forcefully, and groped for the pills by her feet. His fingertips clenched the pill that was covered in blood and dust. She closed her eyes and swallowed the pill. Pharaoh, he glanced coldly at Xiao Yulu before looking at the profound practitioners from the various forces. As long as you join the Palace of Tenebrous Shadow and remain loyal to it, you will definitely be rewarded handsomely. What the Dark Nether Palace doesn't lack are all kinds of secret skills and precious elixirs. As he spoke, Xiao Yulu, who had been on the verge of death, quickly stood up after swallowing a medicinal pill. She looked at her own body in surprise. His face was no longer pale from his severe injuries. His eyes were filled with vigor. "Thank you, Palace of Gloomy Darkness. I swear to follow the Palace of Darkness to my death." Xiao Yulu was wild with joy as she said to Pharaoh he. Pharaoh he snorted coldly, then leaped and returned to the group of black-robed men. The speed of Xiao Yulu's recovery left all the profound practitioners speechless. They heard Pharaoh he's words again. Chapter 37-43. Those cultivators who stood at a high position wanted to raise their profound grade the most, to become even stronger. Profound grade, ability, was the only standard to determine their position. The strong were respected. Only by becoming stronger would they be able to stand firm and live for a longer period of time. The conditions proposed by the Palace of Gloomy Darkness were indeed tempting to everyone. Everyone had witnessed Palace of Darkness' ability with their own eyes, and there was no way to deny Palace of Darkness's power and various shocking secret arts. What they could learn. For example, to summon the white dragon monster earlier. For example, to be like these black-robed men, to be able to use it to become immortal, invulnerable and impervious to fire and water. For example, to learn the secret art of creating wild beasts with flesh and blood. For example, to obtain the medicinal pills which Xiao Yulu had swallowed earlier. Consuming one pill, even if one was on the verge of death, he would be rejuvenated. For example. Wait a minute, there were many other benefits. In comparison, joining Palace of Darkness didn't seem to be a loss at all. Birds chose a good tree to nest in. People walked towards higher ground. This had nothing to do with betraying the original family or the original powerhouse. At this moment, there were even more cultivators who abandoned their own powerhouses and joined Palace of Darkness. When Xiao Yulu saw this scene, a sinister smile appeared in her eyes. Yu Ji sneered as his lips twitched, as he looked at Yiqing Luo complacently. "See, this is the human heart. This bunch of trash's ability, originally can't be compared to my dead corpse army. Now, you don't have the advantage in terms of numbers." He staggered backwards a few steps. Blood flowed down his arm. And speedily dissipated in the direction of those two enormous monsters. His malevolent expression was as he laughed coldly. Yiqing Luo's slender brows were tightly knitted into a bundle. Yiqing Luo could understand each cultivator's choice. She couldn't say that they were wrong. But she couldn't agree with their actions. Once one was branded with the word traitor to a person's life, this was a term which could never be washed away. No matter which powerhouse it was. Betraying the first time. They would definitely betray the second time. This kind of people were not trustworthy and not worth to be friends with. Yiqing Luo was very clear on the reason why Xiao Yulu supported her dispirited body to persuade everyone. Xiao Yulu was the first person to join Palace of Darkness. If she didn't persuade more people to join, her reputation would be completely ruined. Now, he had persuaded so many profound practitioners from the various major powers to join him. If he said it out loud, it was just for the sake of survival and to become stronger. To put it bluntly, she was just finding a few scapegoats to protect her good reputation. Those cultivators who joined the Nether Palace, Yiqing Luo didn't want to waste her breath to feed them any chicken soup. In any case, they would eventually regret their choice today. Yiqing Luo's attention was focused on the two gigantic wild beasts in front of her. From time to time, he would attack and harass the Azure Dragon. Facing two different-sized wild beasts with similar strength, Yiqing Luo was getting more and more strenuous. She just couldn't show it. If her aura was slightly weaker, the morale of their side would weaken as a result. The Palace of Gloomy Darkness would have a chance. The two sides were still fighting. The executive elders were still shouting loudly to boost morale. But it still couldn't stop them. More and more profound practitioners surged towards the Palace of Darkness. Yiqing Luo's side gradually fell into a disadvantageous position. The morale of the struggling crowd plummeted, and they no longer had any desire to fight. The reason why he insisted on standing here. Chapter 37:44. The sky was dyed red by the dark clouds that were shrouded in blood. More and more profound practitioners fell to the ground. Just a moment ago, they were comrades. The next moment, he became an enemy, and he even died at the hands of the other party. Yiqing Luo's brows creased tightly when she saw this. If he didn't do something to boost the morale of the soldiers, then he would definitely die. This group of profounders were simply waiting for death. She glanced at the two blood fangs that surrounded her, and her eyes flickered slightly. Azure Dragon. The Azure Dragon let out a low roar. Immediately after, Yiqing Luo's 5 fingers moved and the glower flame fan suddenly surged, drawing out a strong airflow, chopping down towards the two blood fangs. Meanwhile, Yiqing Luo leapt up and flipped onto the green dragon's back. The Azure Dragon's huge tail suddenly flipped. Heavy waves of qi crisscrossed the sky. A berserk power that seemed capable of destroying heaven and earth slammed against the ground like raging waves. The entire battlefield was covered in rubble. In this chaos, Yiqing Luo called out to Shiju, who was battling with Li Mao and the others in her heart. Her body suddenly fell down. Shiju's massive body caught her firmly. Then, it quickly flew towards where Pharaoh Crane and Xiao Yulu were standing. Yuji, who was protected by 2 blood fangs, couldn't move. But, Pharaoh Crane and Xiao Yulu, these two scum. It shouldn't be a problem to solve it. Yiqing Luo expressed that she, a person who had not even reached the standard to ascend to the Earth Realm, in order to motivate a group of Earth Realm cultivators, she was willing to give it her all. If this group of profound practitioners were still so weak, could she choose to become evil and kill them with her own hands? Yiqing Luo's actions were extremely swift, and in a blink of an eye, she had already dashed in front of Xiao Yulu. Perhaps Xiao Yulu thought that those 2 wild beasts were enough to trap Yiqing Luo. He didn't even have time to react. Immediately after, a red figure flashed past. Her neck was lifted by a slender and fair hand. Xiao Yulu's eyes narrowed. She had just escaped from death. He hadn't even had the chance to enjoy the feeling of being alive again. Death had found her here. Xiao Yulu's face contorted in pain. But she could not struggle. Because the moment Yiqing Luo locked her neck tightly, he commanded Shiju to soar into the sky. Xiao Yulu was grabbed by the neck by Yiqing Luo, hanging in mid-air for a parade. Yiqing Luo! Pharaoh Crane exclaimed in disbelief as he looked at Xiao Yulu, who was suspended in the sky. He cried out in alarm. This caused the profounders of the various powers to look over. Wasn't she killed by those 2 monsters? How, this girl is too strong. She actually broke through the defense of those 2 monsters. Look! The Empyrean ferry of Without Embroiling City is suspended in midair. The people of the major forces were all shocked and flabbergasted. That gigantic beast could wipe them out with just one. When Yiqing Luo was facing the 2 gigantic wild beasts, not only was she able to handle it with ease, she was even able to break through their defenses and attack Xiao Yulu when she was unprepared. Everyone looked at the gigantic black panther galloping in the sky, as well as the red-clothed girl on its back. His eyes lit up. Then, what shocked everyone the most was that the girl on the black panther did not stop because of this. Her eyes were deep and serene, her slender fingers gripped the glower flame fan tightly as she flipped it. The surging bright red glow turned into densely packed light rays as it was released. That light rays made one's eyes feel a faint piercing pain. Pharaoh Crane frowned as an ominous premonition arose in his heart. He stared at that light for a moment and swiftly retreated to the side. Chapter 37:45. The next moment. Under the densely packed red rays of light, Qin Xiaolian's eyes widened. No one had noticed that under the bright red light, there was a hint of silver lining. By the time Pharaoh he sensed the chill, it was already too late. The hidden silver threads under the glower flame fan had already wrapped around Pharaoh he. Following that, Yi Qing Luo hooked her finger. The glower flame fan closed. Numerous silver threads lifted Pharaoh he's body up. His body was tied up, hanging horizontally in midair. Pharaoh he cried out miserably. His four limbs kept struggling in midair. The icy cold silver threads were like sharp blades, sticking close to his skin, his flesh. Faintly, there was a piercing pain. He could even feel a thick liquid spilling out from his body. Those silver threads were not ordinary silver threads. When Pharaoh Crane realized this, his entire body froze. Palace of Darkness, you're just a rat hiding in the dark. How dare you speak such bullshit in front of all the famous sects? The young lady's cold laughter echoed throughout the entire auction. Her tone was filled with ridicule. Since the two of you beautified Palace of Darkness so well, then, do you think that before you die, you'll be able to see the people from Palace of Darkness save you? Pharaoh he and Xiao Yulu's eyes widened in terror, but they had no strength to move. Yi Qing Luo's lips curled as her gaze looked downwards, at those cultivators who had lost all their battle intent. Do you really understand what is a strong cultivator? A real strong cultivator, will they escape from danger? A real strong cultivator, will they seek for shortcuts, to improve themselves? A real strong cultivator, in front of the battlefield, will they doubt their own ability, to wear down their battle intent? After a few rounds of questioning, Yi Qing Luo's voice became sharper. Following that, she gave a cold laugh, revealing some traces of ridicule. The strong cultivator that I think, is born from adversity and tempering, through battles. Facing an opponent who is stronger than you, even more powerful, shouldn't be fear. But your battle intent, is ignited. To improve yourself, to the extent where you are able to battle with the opponent. After Yi Qing Luo finished her sentence, she threw Xiao Yulu who was in her hands fiercely towards a direction. If you keep using the mentality of a weakling to face everything, you will be like these trash, waiting to be trampled upon. Ah! The feeling of weightlessness caused Xiao Yulu to scream. The fear of falling from such a great height eroded her heart. This fall did not have the assistance of any profound qi. She would definitely be smashed into minced meat. Oh! Pharaoh Crane let out a painful groan. The silver threads wrapped around him, causing his body to spin like a spiral. Just a moment ago, the two people from Gloom Palace were still stirring up the people's hearts. In the next instant, he was in such a sorry state. Coupled with Yi Qing Luo's words, everyone felt ashamed and embarrassed. He had lived for more than half of his life, but he was still not as clear as a girl. Everyone was still a little afraid. However, his confidence was greatly boosted. Ah! Xiao Yulu's ear-piercing scream pierced through the sky. Those screams made one's head hurt. Her body was caught firmly by someone. She was nestled in that person's arms, screaming to vent the fear and pain in her heart. The person who was hugging her frowned tightly, as his expression was impatient. When he opened his mouth, his voice was chilly. Scream again and I'll throw you out. Xiao Yulu was so frightened that she was shivering. Hearing that voice, her tightly shut eyes immediately opened, as her eyes stared intently at the person who was hugging her. When she saw that person's face clearly. Chapter 37:46. The person who caught Xiao Yulu was none other than Xiao Yinyan. The direction in which Yi Qing Luo threw the man was in the direction of Xiao Yinyan. After all, Xiao Yulu was Xiao Yinyan's younger sister. She was the biological daughter of Patriarch Xiao. Yi Qing Luo naturally couldn't really take action to claim Xiao Yulu's life. Of course, this was under the premise that her life was not in danger. When she had first arrived in the Earth domain, Xiao Yinyan had always been the one helping her. He had never asked her for anything in return. If she really killed Xiao Yulu, it would be a miracle. How could she face Xiao Yinyan in the future? Even if Xiao Yinyan didn't care about his younger sister. However, kinship and blood ties still existed. This was an indelible fact. How was Xiao Yulu's solution? Xiao Yinyan would be the only one to make the decision. Yi Qing Luo withdrew her vision and didn't pay any more attention to Xiao Yinyan and Xiao Yulu's situation. Instead, he moved his fingers and tightened the silver thread in his hand. Then, he swept up the pharaoh crane and threw him in the direction of the two enormous beasts. Yi Qing Luo, Azure Dragon, and Shi Ju worked together to grab hold of the opportunity to reverse the current situation, which seemed to have taken a very long time. In reality, it was less than the time it took for a stick of incense to burn. The Azure Dragon, who was facing two gigantic beasts, was slowly falling into a disadvantageous position. Not to mention the Green Dragon's power, because of the contract with Yi Qing Luo, or because the Earth realm would be suppressed by the realm's balance. For example, this land was also a restriction for Azure Dragon. The auction venue was extremely vast, but there was a large group of profounders and a large group of black-robed people. Most importantly, these two blood fang monsters were too huge. The size of the Azure Dragon and the size of the two blood fangs. The space for battle was not too big. Moreover, Azure Dragon was different from Blood Fang. The Azure Dragon had to take into consideration that the cultivators of the major forces would not be harmed. As for Blood Fang, he didn't care. He didn't differentiate between friend and foe. As long as he could attack, he would attack without hesitation. The more apprehensions there were, naturally, their combat power would be affected. After Yi Qing Luo had roused the hearts of the people, he immediately used Pharaoh He to force Blood Fang's entanglement on the Azure Dragon. Ah! Pharaoh He's terrified scream pierced through the horizon. His body was directly thrown into the overbearing profound energy which was like a sharp blade's force. Ah! Even more miserable screams rang out. Just as Pharaoh Crane was thrown over, Blood Fang opened his mouth and bit him. He didn't even chew it before swallowing it into his stomach. He took advantage of Shuya's momentary distraction. Yi Qing Luo and Azure Dragon's vision met. His fingers gripping the glowing flame fan tightened. She displayed her footwork and violent dark force surged out. She was as fast as lightning. Under the cover of the Green Dragon, she flew towards Yuji. Profound energy encircled his fingertips. Vast and majestic profound energy surged and roared as it attacked secluded silence. Even the air began to explode with a tremor, the air waves rippled out like ripples. Just as Yi Qing Luo's attack was about to claim Yuji's life. Suddenly, Yi Qing Luo felt a chill down her spine as an indescribable sense of fear assaulted her body and mind. Her heart trembled. The momentum of the attack quickly slowed down. Immediately after, his body instinctively made a dodging movement. Her reaction speed was fast, very fast. But she could still feel a sharp and majestic energy, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws towards her. Just sensing this energy, Yi Qing Luo felt as though her skin was being sliced open by something and it was extremely painful. What kind of powerful energy was this? Chapter 3747. Yi Qing Luo didn't know how to describe this feeling. She didn't see anyone. Just a slight sense. Which made her hair stand up as she was extremely vigilant. Only. She was very alert and her reaction was extremely fast. But she was still one step too slow. At the instance when she retreated, the palm wind which brushed past her seemed as though it was going to tear her apart. The surging profound energy instantly swallowed her. The chi wave surged as though it was a huge wave. Yi Qing Luo's face turned pale instantly. Her heart sunk fiercely. The aura of death was spreading around her. Her profound energy exploded as she increased her speed in an attempt to avoid that attack. Even if she couldn't avoid it, she absolutely couldn't die so easily. Just as Yiqing Luo clenched her teeth, about to bear the heart-wrenching pain from that energy, suddenly, she felt a tight grip on her waist. His body was pushed back by a strong and powerful arm, and he fell into a wide embrace. A man's elegant sandalwood scent entered her nostrils. It instantly dispersed the young lady's blood stench. Yiqing Luo was still in a daze as she fell into the man's embrace, and when her forehead knocked against the man's chest, she finally reacted from the pain. "Ah, Xian." Yiqing Luo called out the man's name. The man hugged her with one hand as he raised the other. The wide purple sleeves, under the strong qi, were like purple clouds rolling and floating. A gust of thick black qi which could be seen with the naked eye swept up the raging wind as it contended against Dmo Xian's raised sleeves. Yiqing Luo raised her head as she looked at Dmo Xian worriedly. "Ah, Xian, your body." "No problem." Dmo Xian's eyes drooped as his eyes were filled with tenderness as he smiled and shook his head. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips tightly. Where did this sudden and powerful strength come from? Was it another strong helper from the secluded palace? She pursed her lips even tighter. Just as she was about to ask Dmo Xian to be careful, an icy cold voice suddenly rang. "Yiqing Luo, the person who saved you is not only him, there's me too." Yiqing Luo was stunned as she immediately looked towards the direction of the voice. She then saw a tall figure in that thick black qi, faintly discernible. One could faintly see that blazing red robe sweeping past. As he spoke, the clouds of black qi gradually dispersed in all directions. The man's cold and handsome face was revealed, causing one's heart to palpitate. Yiqing Luo pursed her pink lips. Chu Wu Xian. Dmo Xian and Zhu Wu Xian, one in front and one behind, blocked that thick black qi. The majestic and powerful profound energy, and the air ripples that spread out in the air. They were all blocked by these two people. The dense black gas slowly dissipated and vanished into nothingness. Unexpectedly, Zhu Wuxin had also helped her. A low pressure floated down from the top of his head. Yiqing Luo immediately retracted her vision from Zhu Wu Xian as she coughed lightly. "Zhu Wu Xian. Thank you. I don't need young Master Zhu's help, and Luo doesn't need to thank you." Dmo Xian's voice interrupted Yiqing Luo. He intentionally made a declaration as he hugged Yiqing Luo's petite body tightly. Chu Wu Xian was expressionless. "I did it for Yiqing Luo. She has her own self, there's no need for you to worry." Dmo Xian replied coldly. Zhu Wu Xian continued to be expressionless. "Yiqing Luo is my future wife, of course I will worry." Dmo Xian's face turned black. If it wasn't for the fact that the occasion wasn't right. Chapter 37-48. To say that his little Luo, was his future wife in front of him? Ha. She could feel the fluctuating emotions of the man. Yiqing Luo immediately placed her little hand on Dmo Xian's chest, as she comforted him. "Ah, Xian, it's a fact that he extended his hand to save me, so naturally I should thank him. Otherwise, wouldn't others think that I, Yiqing Luo, am an ungrateful person?" She deliberately emphasized the word others. Dmo Xian naturally understood Yiqing Luo's hint. His brows rose as his peach blossom eyes squinted, hugging Yiqing Luo's petite body tightly as he looked at Zhu Wu Xian complacently. "What Lil Luo said is right, after all he's an outsider. An outsider helped you, so it's only right for you to thank him." He was thankful because the other party was an outsider. Those who truly treated him as their family would not care about anything, whether it was a favor or not. Yiqing Luo's words pleased Dmo Xian. His anger from Zhu Wuxin's words also calmed down. Zhu Wuxin's face was expressionless. No one could tell what he was thinking. But Yiqing Luo could sense that Zhu Wu Xian's surrounding icy cold aura had increased by several notches. She knew that her words might hurt Zhu Wuxin. However, she still had to clearly put some distance between the two of them. She smiled at Zhu Wuxin. "Thank you, Zhu Wuxin." Zhu Wuxin did not speak, nor did he respond. He only used that pair of calm and indifferent eyes to stare straight at her. There was not the slightest change of emotion in his eyes. This gaze made Yiqing Luo's hair stand on end. Just at this moment, Yu Ji's angry voice broke the silence. "Castle Master of Death God Castle, what do you mean by this?" Unknowingly, Yu Ji was sitting on Bloodfang's head. In front of the huge beast, he was like an ant. If one didn't look carefully, they wouldn't be able to find where he was. Since we have decided not to cooperate with the Palace of Darkness, then I hope that the Castle Lord of Death God Castle will not interfere with all the plans of the Palace of Darkness. Yu Ji gritted his teeth as he spoke. Clearly, he had long held a grudge against Zhu Wuxin. Zhu Wuxian glanced at Yu Ji indifferently and ignored him. However, from the corner of his eyes, he caught a glimpse of the two people hugging each other. A dim light flashed in the depths of Zhu Wuxin's eyes. He opened his mouth and his voice was as cold as ice. "The reason why we don't cooperate with the Palace of Seclusion is because your plan is to hurt Yiqing Luo. The reason I interfered was because you guys touched her." His words were so straightforward and direct. It was like a passionate confession, expressing his feelings. He had to admit it. This kind of words could really move a girl's heart. However, other than looking like a cute girl in front of Dmo Xian, Yiqing Luo didn't have the so-called maiden's heart. This was the second time Yiqing Luo had heard of Zhu Wuxian giving up on the collaboration with the Palace of Seclusion. It was just that this time, it came from Zhu Wuxin's own mouth. She didn't have that kind of feeling between a man and a woman. However, he was truly grateful. For her, he gave up his goal. This made Yiqing Luo grateful and touched, but also a little awkward. She did not think that there was a relationship between her and Zhu Wuxin. She could make Zhu Wuxin sacrifice for her. That was the goal he had worked so hard for. For a moment, she did not know how she should face Zhu Wuxin. Heh. He. Suddenly, Yu Ji laughed crazily. Chapter 37-49. Shut up. Zhu Wuxian's expression suddenly turned cold. His chilly eyes were filled with a piece of solemnity. Yu Ji laughed loudly. "Why? Afraid that I will expose you in front of Yiqing Luo and spoil your image in her heart? You're looking for death." Zhu Wuxian's eyes were filled with murderous intent as his tyrannical profound energy was like a wave crashing towards Yu Ji. Blood Fang leapt up and raised his claws to block Zhu Wuxian's attack. Bam! Blood Fang's huge body flew out heavily as it crashed onto the ground. A wave of earth quaked and mountains swayed. Zhu Wuxian flew up as his red robe flashed past, leaving behind an afterimage as he stepped on Blood Fang's body and flew towards Yu Ji. Just as Zhu Wuxian was about to move, a chilly voice rang, "Wait." The young lady's voice successfully made Zhu Wuxian, who was in midair, stop his actions. He floated in midair as he turned his head sideways to look at the young lady. Yiqing Luo frowned slightly as she raised her eyes and met Zhu Wuxian's eyes. Following that, she opened her mouth to ask, "What did Yu Ji mean by that?" "Nothing much." Zhu Wuxian replied indifferently. Even though they were separated by a distance, Yiqing Luo could still feel that after she asked this question, the chill on Zhu Wuxian's body became even more intense. Yu Ji, who was hiding on the other Blood Fang's back, was filled with cold sweat after he escaped death. He clutched at his chest and panted heavily, but he couldn't stop laughing. "Of course he doesn't want to tell you. Ha ha ha. Not so long ago, the high and mighty young Master Chu would actually do something for a woman, and a woman who's already someone else's wife. Ha ha ha, what a joke, what a joke. Yu Ji." Zhu Wuxian's icy cold voice stopped Yu Ji as his chilly eyes stared deadly at Yu Ji. Yiqing Luo frowned as her little hand patted Dmo Xian's hand, which was placed on her waist. After Dmo Xian let go of her, She leapt up and faced Zhu Wu Xian. What he said is related to me, so I have the right to know what happened. The two of them stood face to face. The icy cold flame encircled the two of them. The raging hurricane was also surging around the two of them, but it didn't come near them. Zhu Wuxin did not speak. There seemed to be a storm gathering on his expressionless face. Yiqing Luo pursed her lips and shifted her gaze towards Yu Ji. What did you say earlier? Say it again. Perhaps he wanted to sow discord between her and Zhu Wuxin. Perhaps he was already dissatisfied with Zhu Wuxin's coldness and wanted to make Zhu Wuxin suffer. When Yiqing Luo asked, secluded silence. Yu Ji answered without hesitation, you didn't hear wrongly. The moment you arrived in the Earth realm, you were separated from Di Zun and the others. It wasn't an accident, nor was it because of the turbulence in the passageway leading to the upper realm. It was all planned by young Master Zhu. After Yu Ji said this, he immediately looked at Zhu Wuxin, afraid that Zhu Wuxin would be angered by this. However, he saw Zhu Wuxin standing there silently. Wisps of black hair covered half of Zhu Wuxin's face. His emotions were also concealed within. When Yu Ji saw that Zhu Wuxin didn't have any reaction, he didn't even try to defend himself. Instantly, as though he had caught hold of Zhu Wuxin's weakness, he sneered as he continued, in order to get you, he resorted to unscrupulous means. Yiqing Luo, do you feel that the image of him in your heart has been destroyed? That man, totally isn't like what he showed. Yu Ji slandered Zhu Wuxin without any limits. Chapter 3750. It was probably because Zhu Wu Xian was worried about Yiqing Luo and didn't dare to make a move. Yu Ji vented out all the unhappiness towards Zhu Wu Xian which he had suppressed in his heart. He laughed loudly as he stared at Yiqing Luo's face without blinking, attempting to see the embarrassment and anger on Yiqing Luo's face. He wanted to see Yiqing Luo making a move on Zhu Wu Xian in a rage. The best was for both of them to suffer. Then he would be able to reap the benefits from the third party. But Yu Ji stared at Yiqing Luo for quite some time. The most nasty slanderous words were said. Yiqing Luo's gorgeous face didn't have any change in expression from the start to the end. Calm, exactly the same as Zhu Wu Xian's expressionless face. Yu Ji's heart shuddered as his throat tightened, unable to spit out a single word. After he stopped talking, Yiqing Luo, who had not moved for a long time, slowly raised her slender brows. You keep saying that it's all Zhu Wu Xian's plan, then, please answer a question of mine. Yu Ji's pupils contracted as he stared intently at her. Yiqing Luo's lips curled as she spoke word by word. If I didn't remember wrongly, that strong suction force in the passageway space was filled with sinister murderous intent. I don't believe that Zhu Wu Xian would have that kind of murderous intent towards me. Yu Ji's expression congealed. Yiqing Luo noticed the change in his emotions as she laughed. Before you fabricate a lie, make a draft first so that it's full of loopholes and no one will believe it. What I said is all true. After you reached the Earth realm, you were brought to Without Embroiling City by him. Yu Ji saw that Yiqing Luo didn't believe him and instantly panicked. After you came to Without Embroiling City. In order to let you stay by his side, you were unconscious for half a month, don't you know? Yiqing Luo's pupils had some changes. Previously she found out from Dmo Xian that her memories when she reached the Earth realm were indeed very messy. Before she regained consciousness from her memories, she had no memory of the past half a month. Even old man Song's memory was blank. This was because of Zhu Wu Xian. Yu Ji saw that Yiqing Luo wasn't speaking for a long time and he took a look at Zhu Wu Xian, who was still silent with his head lowered as his heart was suddenly lifted up. He gripped Blood Fang's thick hair tightly to ease the fear in his heart. He gritted his teeth and said, I admit it. When you were in the tunnel, the suction force you felt was indeed the work of the Palace of Darkness. However, after that, it was Zhu Wuxin who snatched you from the hands of the Venerable One and betrayed his cooperation with the Venerable One. His gaze shot towards Dmo Xian, who was not too far away, and immediately returned back to Yiqing Luo. For his own selfish desires, he separated you from the Overlord, and made you unconscious for an entire half a month, and even intentionally erased your memories. It's obvious that he's harboring evil intentions. In that half a month, even if he did anything to you, I'm afraid you wouldn't know. He deliberately used an extremely ambiguous tone and gaze to mock her. These words caused Zhu Wu Xian, who had been silent the entire time, to suddenly raise his head. His cold gaze locked onto Yu Ji. Yu Ji was so scared that he almost fell off Bloodtooth's head. But Zhu Wu Xian's gaze quickly returned back to Yi Qing Luo. His cold face creased into a bundle. His slightly chilly eyes stared at Yi Qing Luo, wanting to say something several times. But when the words were at the tip of his tongue, he swallowed them back. Chapter 3751. Why aren't you panicking? Why don't you blame Zhu Wuxin? During that half a month, he made you betray Venerable Sovereign. How can you still be so calm? Yu Ji didn't understand why Yi Qing Luo was still putting on a calm and indifferent look. Wouldn't ordinary women fly into a rage out of humiliation when they hear such words that tarnish their reputations? Moreover, even a passerby like him knew how jealous Di Zun was. Why didn't Venerable Sovereign start a war with Zhu Wuxin out of anger? All of this was completely different from what he had planned. Hearing the urgency in Yu Ji's tone, Yi Qing Luo merely smiled calmly. I don't understand Zhu Wu Xian, but the only thing I can confirm is Zhu Wu Xian isn't that kind of person. She looked at Zhu Wuxin. He also caught the flash of panic in Zhu Wuxin's eyes. She curled her lips and smiled. I am indeed very angry that you trapped me for half a month and erased my memory. But, as for the other things, I believe you won't do them. If I really did it, what would you do? Zhu Wuxin countered with a question, his eyes full of seriousness. Yi Qing Luo smiled as she shook her head. You won't. Zhu Wuxin was not someone who would take advantage of others when they were down. If Zhu Wuxin was really that kind of person, he had many opportunities to forcefully take her away and engage in a torturous drama. However, Zhu Wuxin had never done so. He is only paranoid that she is his person. Other than stubbornly wanting to abide by the agreement from many years ago, he would never purposely cause her any trouble. Details tell a person's heart. Even if he did not understand Zhu Wuxin's character, Yi Qing Luo was certain that Zhu Wu Xian absolutely would not do anything to her. As for the disillusionment you mentioned before, I can only tell you that it doesn't exist. Yi Qing Luo looked at Yu Ji smilingly as her eyes were filled with ridicule. As for him using unscrupulous means for me, this can only mean that my charm is very big. You. Yu Ji trembled as he pointed at Yi Qing Luo, his face filled with disbelief. He was so angry that he almost vomited blood. Who would have thought that he would shout at the top of his voice and slander Zhu Wuxin? But it was totally unable to incite disharmony between Yi Qing Luo and Zhu Wu Xian's relationship. Instead, he had completely offended Zhu Wuxin. No, it was not just Zhu Wu Xian, and he had also offended that venerable sovereign with a sea of jealousy. If Di Zun and Zhu Wuxin made a move, he had no way out. Trash. Suddenly, a cold voice came from behind Yu Ji. When Yu Ji heard this voice, his entire body stiffened and he straightened his body. This voice made Yi Qing Luo and the others' expressions congealed as their bodies tensed up. His body had instinctively entered a defensive state. It was that feeling again. It was a feeling of fear that made one's heart tremble. It was the powerful force that had almost taken her life. Yi Qing Luo's breathing instantly congealed as her body seemed to have a heavy pressure pressing down on her. At this moment, she felt a broad embrace behind her. The moment the pressure hit him, the elegant sandalwood fragrance had already dispelled all the negative effects. She arched herself into Dmo Xian's arms and her little hand clutched his robes as she lowered her voice. Ah Xian, it's that energy earlier. Dmo Xian's expression was also grave as he raised his eyes to look at Yu Ji's direction. Behind Yu Ji, a black figure flew over like a ghost. Chapter 3752. What made Yiqing Luo most astonished was that man looked extremely young. At most, he looked around 24 or 25 years old. Just 24 or 25 years old, and his ability was already so powerful? That man. Who on earth was he? Young lord. When Yu Ji saw that man, he started to tremble uncontrollably. He didn't even bother about the hand which was inserted into his chest as he knelt down on the ground and kowtowed with all his might. When his hand stretched out from the hole in his chest, immediately large amounts of blood started to gush out. The blood was like a blood fountain as it seeped out countless amounts of blood. Yu Ji could feel the blood flowing out from his body rapidly. The feeling of losing too much blood made him dizzy. But he didn't dare to move. Totally didn't dare to move. He could only allow the blood to flow out from his body, allowing the two blood fangs to suck the blood that seeped out from his body. Trash. That man stepped on the air like that, strolling leisurely as though he was in his own backyard. He stepped on the air as he walked step by step to Yu Ji's side. From the side, his cold and treacherous gaze was like a poisonous snake, coiling around Yu Ji. Yu Ji's body trembled even more as he stammered, young lord, I am only. It's just a small task, and it forced you to use secluded palace's forbidden art. If you're not trash, then what are you? The man laughed coldly as he interrupted Yu Ji's explanation. His smile was sinister. Yes. I am trash. Yu Ji didn't even dare to resist as his forehead heavily smashed onto the ground. Since you're trash, then you shouldn't stay in this world. The man's icy cold voice had no trace of emotions. Just as his words landed, Yu Ji gave a miserable ah as his body suddenly floated into the air. Immediately after, under everyone's gaze, his body exploded and turned into a blood mist as it floated in the air. The death of the host. The two enormous wild beasts also dissipated along with the wind. The entire auction finally became much more spacious. The disappearance of the monsters made the various powerhouses' cultivators whose hearts were hanging in suspense finally relaxed. All of them heaved a long sigh of relief. But everyone relaxed. Yiqing Luo only felt fear surging up her heart. To tell the truth, if it was her, she would never be like this man and kill Yu Ji so cleanly. After all, the purpose of secluded silence's existence was merely to provide blood for those two dark-type wild beasts. The two beasts were there. It was beneficial to the Dark Nether Palace. But the man didn't. The man didn't hesitate at all and killed Yu Ji so easily. This action could only mean two things. Firstly, the man only cared about acting cool and didn't think too much about it. Secondly, the reason for that was because the man's strength gave him absolute confidence that he would be able to destroy the auction without any external help. Yiqing Luo was more inclined towards the second option. That man had absolute strength and absolute confidence. The existence of Yu Ji and Shuya didn't matter. Just now, when the man made his move, she didn't even see the man's movements. This was enough to show the difference in strength between her and the man. Perhaps he felt the uneasiness in Yiqing Luo's heart. The arm around her waist tightened a little. She looked up and met the man's concerned gaze. He said nothing, but his eyes were full of concern for her. Yiqing Luo calmed herself down as she shook her head at him. Dmo Xian's fingers circled around her waist as he pacified her emotions. Their gazes met. You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.